Okay, so I was approached by a member of the Demonic Legion forum asking me for some advice on how to play the Demons versus Ogres matchup, particularly with double Iron Blaster Ogres and a Greater Demon. And so my replies to him started to turn into some lengthy walls of text, so I figured I would just record a video and try to use some of the pictures that I have to kind of explain my thoughts on the Greater Demon versus Iron Blaster matchup. And I figured I'd have a little bit of semi-decent insight, considering that the battle reports that I've done probably account for less than a quarter of the total games against Ogres that I've played, which I realize is a bit presumptuous. But then again, if you don't like my thoughts, don't watch my videos. So anyway, so the most important part of the Ogre in any game of Warhammer, but especially so when you have a Greater Demon, and particularly when it's facing cannons, is the deployment phase. And usually what happens is, when you're facing double Iron Blasters, you'll have enough drops to the Iron Blasters are going to go down before the Greater Demon does, essentially. And so usually, typically what the Ogre player will do is he'll put an Iron Blaster on each flank, because he doesn't know where the Greater Demon is going to go, and he wants to cover as much of the board as possible. So what usually this means for the Greater Demon is, unless some terrain in the center of the table presents itself to block the cannonball shot, is usually the Greater Demon will go on a flank, so that only one of the Iron Blasters can get a shot on him. And so here's a picture of a game I played. You'll notice that it was actually only against, he only has one Iron Blaster, but this is, my deployment would be exactly the same even if he had two. And so basically what you want to do is you want to look at the table. My first piece of advice is just to know the cannon rules inside and out, because they are the single biggest threat to your Greater Demon. And if you know the rules, you can identify the places on the table that allow the shots for cannons. So know what stops cannonballs. Things like obstacles will stop cannonballs, impassable terrain stops them, buildings will stop them because buildings are considered impassable terrain per the building rules. Monstrous beasts or monstrous cav or anything like that will potentially stop the cannonball, which is particularly useful with demons given the ward save. So just know the cannon rules inside and out, know what shots he can take and what shots he can't, and always be thinking about where you're moving your Greater Demon is what cannon shots you can expose yourself to and which ones you can protect yourself from. So here's another picture. You can see that this is a fairly standard demon tactic, is to bunker your Greater Demon kind of behind typically fiends, because they have 3 wounds, but against any of our monstrous beast or monstrous cav rare choices. Because basically the cannon has to kill the creature in order to bounce the shot into the Greater Demon, and even if they do so, it takes the math on a cannon shot successfully killing a Greater Demon. It makes it much more in your favor. So that's really your first line of defense is your own units. You can use the deployment. You can see in this picture that I'm using the buildings to block the cannon shots. And the thing about the Greater Demons is, 3 of them are insanely fast, and so you can position them so that friendly troops will also block the cannon shots. So that's really nice. And then that's essentially what you want to be doing in the beginning of the game, is not allowing any shots on the Greater Demon, or as few as possible, because basically if you lose that, you lose the game. But I don't need to tell any of you that. Okay, so the next bit is when you're playing against Ogres is the initiative, and basically the initiative of the game, and who's dictating the flow of the game by how they're moving their units. And typically, in my experience, this is basically done by the Ogre player for several reasons. And the first is that your most powerful tool, which is your Greater Demon and your core fighting blocks, typically are on the back foot starting the game against the double Iron Blasters, because the Iron Blasters control where the Demon has to go, the Greater Demon I mean, and if the ogre units are large enough, they can just plow right through any of your core fighting choices. So typically, the ogre player has the initiative early in the game. And so you can see in this picture that his core blocks basically have these huge open spaces of movement where they can basically move. But he's not going to get any charges because there's no sense in just giving him that. But he's got, like, I'm not giving him any charges, and he's just basically going to have to come out of, just he's got to move basically. And the thing is, in the Demon versus Ogre game, is typically you don't want to get involved in a big brawl in the center, because once that happens and the Troll Guts goes up, that's it. So the advantage that the Demons have is with our support units and the Greater Demon on the periphery, so that's what you want to be thinking about as you're playing the game. And objective number one, obviously, is to take down the Iron Blasters, and kind of secondary is to keep his core units from just rampaging all over the table, because in these games I'm using Demonettes as my core, but even if you're using Bloodletters, they're a lot more dangerous for the ogres to go into, but if they're packing 3 or 4 characters and breath weapons and stuff, they can do a lot of damage, and they can a well-built ogre core unit with the 3 or 4 characters can go through a Bloodletter horde in one round. So basically, even though I'm not using Bloodletters, typically the strategy is the same, is to not give his core units any easy charges early in the game, which is basically gives him the initiative, but you kind of need to give that up in order to make the game work. Okay, so when you're trying to kill the Iron Blasters, right, there's a couple of strategies that demons have in killing the Iron Blasters, and hands down my favorite strategy is the Siren Song, because it's foolproof. Basically, if you have a Siren Song in your army, typically you can only have one, at least around here, because local comps limit you to 1 demonic gift, or 1 of each kind. So if you have a Siren Song in your army, you already have a huge leg up, because you put the Greater Demon on a flank, so there's 1 Iron Blaster that's going to have a shot on the Greater Demon, and if you deploy the Siren Song so it can call in that 1 Iron Blaster, it basically cancels that shot. The other one can't shoot at him, and basically you have a free turn. So here's a picture of this unit is bunkering a Siren Song Herald, and instead of having a core unit in the center of the table where it's going to go to work on his core units, I actually have it on the flank here to just cancel that Iron Blaster shot so that it can't take out the Greater Demon. So that's what you do with your Siren Song, is you find you deploy your Greater Demon, or you anticipate where he's going to go regarding the terrain on the table, and then try to use the Siren Song to keep that Iron Blaster that's got that good shot from killing him. The next best option is let's see if I got a picture here of it. Okay, the next best option is demons have a lot of extremely fast support units. And that is my second preferred method, because a lot of times Siren Song is banned. So use basically maneuvering your fast support units to the flank of the Iron Blaster and just charging it in the flank, because it's a chariot. So and chariot, the beast drawing chariots can't attack to the flank or the rear; they can only attack to the front. So basically, if you charge an Iron Blaster in the flank, it cancels the Rhinox's attacks, and you're basically just dealing with a single ogre. So here in this picture, you can see that I have a unit of 6 Seekers, which are widely regarded as one of the worst units in the Demon book. And they're poised to charge the flank of this Iron Blaster. And even though they are absolutely horrific in close combat, the fact that they're charging it in the flank means they only have to deal with the ogre and his little Noblar buddy. And even if the ogre does more wounds to them, they still got to charge in a flank. And in this case, they've caught the Iron Blaster outside of the leadership bubble because of the situation on the table. He's had to kind of commit his core units and other things like that, and so it isolates the Iron Blaster from the leadership. And when you do this, if you catch it with even the weakest unit you can imagine, you can kill it. You know, is if this was 5 Furies or a single Fiend or anything like that, you know, charging the Iron Blaster in the flank is almost guaranteed to finish it off. If for some weird reason it passes, you know, the Iron Blaster passes its break check on a 5 or a 6 or whatever, it's probably going to reform and kill the unit that you send in after it, but at the very least it's not going to be shooting at you in the next turn. So if it gives you one more turn to move your Greater Demon or do whatever. Basically, that's the best way to take them down, is to have a support unit, of which we have many that are extremely fast. Just charge it in the flank and take it down. And one thing I've noticed, and please don't get offended if you play Ogres, but a lot of beginner and intermediate level Ogre players will have a very overinflated sense of the combat prowess of their Iron Blasters, and they'll actually think that they're a little tougher than they actually are. So you can use that to your advantage by having these weak support units in position to charge the Iron Blasters in the flank. Let's see here. Winning combat against Ogres. So let's see. In this picture I have a unit of Demonettes on the flank of this big Iron Gut unit, and then I have Flesh Hounds and a Blood Crusher in the front. And I'm using all extremely weak close combat units. I mean, Flesh Hounds are okay. They're really not that great. They're a little overpriced. Blood Crusher's good, but Demonettes are exceptionally weak. And here they're fighting against a large unit of Iron Guts with full command and an Ogre character. And I'm gonna win this because the trick that you can use to beating Ogres like this in these kind of if you have a lot of kind of small weak units, if you can double or triple them up on Ogre units like this in a position that's going to maximize your combat res, like the Demonettes on the flank or whatever, even though the Ogres are much more capable in close combat than you are, it's just forcing them to spread their attacks out, and catching them with a bad little bit of combat res can actually lead to you just winning the combat. And then once you do that, they're only leadership 7 at the end of the day. So if you can catch them away from the general, in this case you can see his leadership bubbles off to the left. You know, if you could just win the combat, and they'll probably break. And that's what actually happens in this game, is these 3 individually very weak units end up working together to take down this unit of 12 Iron Guts with a character. And then basically the last part is, if you can keep your Greater Demon alive against the Ogres, your taking down the Iron Blasters is obviously the #1 priority. And once they're gone, basically they don't really have a good answer for your Greater Demon as long as you don't play it sloppily. So I mean, there's no reason to charge the Greater Demon headfirst into the Iron Guts, the big unit with all the characters in it. So don't do that. But basically, once the Iron Blasters go down, which ideally is turn 2 or 3, your Greater Demon should just be able to absolutely ransack all of their support units. You can see in this picture, I have my Keeper's Secret. She's fighting a big unit of Iron Guts to the front and a unit of Mournfangs to the flank, and actually she ends up winning this combat and just eating all of these units, because the simple fact of the matter is Ogres really don't have a good answer for a Greater Demon other than the Iron Blasters. So you know, once you can handle that, you can let your Greater Demon really start to score some big points. Because the high weapon skill and the high toughness, it's too difficult for the Ogres to deal with in close combat. So here's another picture of the Keeper of Secrets taking on a giant unit of Ogres by herself. You know, and she's really not bothered about it, because I think there's a Tyrant in there as well, but even then there's nothing they can do to really bother her. So basically, just to kind of sum up, deployment, you know the canon rules, and do what you can to make sure only one Iron Blaster, preferably none, but only one at the most, has a shot on your Greater Demon. Have a plan to kill the Iron Blasters by the second turn. You know, get your support units to the flank where they can get those easy charges, or use the positioning of your Greater Demon to force him to turn the Iron Blaster in order to get a good shot, so that it's going to have to expose itself to a charge from one of your support units. Make sure you always double and triple up on Ogre combat units if you can, because even much weaker units can beat them if you force them to spread their attacks out. So rarely, if ever, would you want to engage on a unit by unit basis. Always try to double and triple up, and even if it's just small, relatively weak units, you can generally win. And basically the object of the game is to take down the Iron Blaster so your Greater Demon can just run over, just ransack the Ogre army. It's not easy though, so anyway, you know, those are my thoughts on taking down Ogres with Greater Demons. Let me know what you guys think, particularly the individual that this was addressed to. You know who you are. And anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and you know, maybe learned something, or just give me some feedback. But otherwise, I'll just catch you guys later.